This is Therese Berlinski, and I have my daughter with me, Tristan Berlinski.
Hi there, everybody.
We're here with you from Presence to Pupils, and we're bringing to you a podcast called REALLM, Real Life Meditation. And the objective of this podcast is so that you can have a perspective of our lives and how we introduce and live mindfully and use meditation and the neuroscience of mindfulness and meditation to have a better life. And so what you're going to get is little snippets into our life of some of the struggles that we deal with and how we use our practices to not allow those struggles to overwhelm and overcome us, but instead to manifest the life we want. And as Tristan ventures into her college career and her future, all of that's going to unfold and expand into her journey. Hi everyone, today's podcast is about how I found my calling. And basically I found it when I was a child, but I didn't really listen to my truth. And at that time I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. I was a little girl helping all of my friends as a grade schooler, and people even called me Dr. Joyce Brothers, which dates me a little bit, but it gives you a perspective of how involved I was in my passion. And then for some reason my parents advised me that being a psychologist wasn't a good idea, and so I listened to them. And when I went to school at U of M, I took a test to try to figure out what I should do instead of listening to my truth. And that test scored me highest in medicine. But at the time it didn't even occur to me that medicine really is psychology. Psychology is medicine, right? And in a way it's good because of how it turned out. So then what happened next is I realized my second highest score was in environmental science, and since I always loved nature, I decided to get a degree in environmental science. And it wasn't until 2010, when my mom died, that I started to have a depth of introspection that led me to my calling. And it didn't come to me at once. It was this striving, this searching. And this might resonate with you, Tristan, because like right now, you know you want to go into travel. But along your journey in this moment, there's also this element of trying to figure things out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I was at that point in my life, and I said, that I would go into environmental science, but knew it wasn't really the right thing, but just followed it because that's what people told me. So if you can imagine people in your life maybe telling you that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of outside pressures.
Yeah, and as you know, you listen to your parents, right? You always think, well, most people think, my parents know what's right for me. And then when that voice goes away, it's when I tuned into my own voice and I said, it was all driven by the desire to actually connect with my parents on the other side, which is like the secret I don't often tell everyone. But my dad had died in 2007, my mom in 10. And so there was this deep soul searching to be able to connect with them. And through that soul searching, I was striving and like clawing my way up a mountain by becoming certified as a Reiki master, becoming certified in the sacred geometry of energy healing with Elaine Groman, and then even more than that, I was reading a lot of books. I proved to myself life after death through reading and researching, and yet it still didn't feel quite right. And so what happened one day, and this is the moment where I let go, I was flipping through one of my mom's Time magazines and I was looking for her writing in the margin. And I just happened to read this little paragraph where Deepak Chopra said, if there's anything you could do and you didn't have to worry about the financial part of it, what would that be? And the answer to teach mindfulness to children came to me. And within an instant, I said, I'm doing that. That's what I'm doing. And then I slowed myself down. I said, wait a second, I don't even know what mindfulness is. And even then, I don't know, is it already happening? Is someone already doing this? And so how did that come to me? That answer to teach mindfulness to kids when I didn't even know what it was. And as you now know, it's by slowing ourselves down. It's by silencing ourselves. And I just got lucky. I didn't have a practice of meditation or mindfulness, really. I dabbled in some things, but it was just that moment of opening up space, and as we'll get to eventually in a future podcast, allowing something to come to me from God or the quantum, depending on how you think about it. And then there began my journey. So from there, I decided that I would get certified in mindfulness. There was an event going on at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And at the time I had 2 little kids. This was now 2011. Tristan was going into 3rd grade. You remember your teacher Amanda Henderson? Mm-hmm. Who now goes by Amanda Leffler?
Yeah.
And so I had never been separated from my kids for very long, and it was going to be a week-long training. So I said to their dad, you mind coming with me and bringing the kids, and we're going to go into this event. And it was with Goldie Hawn. The famous actress Goldie Hawn has the program called Mind Up. And it was a weekend conference led by educational experts in mindfulness, followed by a week-long training with Daniel Ekshafin and Jennifer Cohen Harper from Little Flower Yoga. Daniel is the one who was leading mindfulness on the West Coast at this time. And so what was really funny is that after the initial session, they had us go into 24 hours of silence. So we were literally wearing a necklace, a lanyard, and a little piece of paper that said something. You remember that?
Like a little tag.
Yeah, in silence.
I remember it being very odd to me.
Yeah.
You had to be silent.
Yeah. And then to come back to the hotel room with my, kids, and I couldn't talk, right? And their dad had to explain everything to them.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No, I had no idea.
It was unexpected?
Yeah. In fact, we were a little bit late to the conference because you had an allergic reaction along the way. Do you remember that?
No. I was in 3rd grade, so no, I don't really remember that.
You were pretty young. We stopped at a restaurant and we told them she had a nut allergy. But there was a problem anyway, and so we were a little bit late. I missed meeting Goldie Hawn in person, but the rest of the event was stellar. Changed my life. And one of the things I remember in particular is I had to be really still in my body. And people don't realize how important things like that are, like those metaphors. You think, oh, why do I really need to be still in my body? Can't I just sit there and meditate, and if a fly is coming by, I swat it or I scratch an itch? But stillness in the body, if you can give up that urge to scratch at everything, you really can start to give up that desire to attend to, if you can think about every text that comes in, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the leading stressors for people your age, is that there's always a download of stuff.
And beyond text, there's like so many notifications that kids receive now. I mean, kids get phones at like 10 years old at this point, and they're just receiving notifications from their friends or different social media platforms all day long. It's like nonstop. So having mindfulness meditation as a tool to be able to notice that notification or notice that text and let it go is super important. And I think it's really cool that they've integrated the do not disturb function on your phone now. It helps. I mean, having mindfulness as a tool is definitely helps more, but still, it's crazy how much kids are exposed to at such a young age. Like, it's just constant.
And isn't it true that, especially on the iPhone, that you get news notifications too? News, yeah, like what's happening in the world. I see that on my phone. There's like a drop down of...
I think there's options, but still.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So anyway, that is how that all got started. And then while I was at that conference, I met other women from the Midwest, including Michigan, who are interested in beginning a nonprofit for mindfulness and education. And so that's sort of another story, but I ended up starting a nonprofit called the Michigan Collaborative for Mindfulness and Education, which we'll put in the show notes a link to that. And that was the beginning of really giving myself up extensively to follow my calling until I ended up finding myself again. So, do you remember seeing the movie The Wizard of Oz when you were little?
Yeah.
So do you remember how Dorothy was striving to get back home throughout the whole movie?
Yes.
And then at the end, Glinda the Good Witch comes to her and she says, you had the power to get back home all along, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do remember that. I remember that line.
Because she went to the wizard and it was like, how many of us, like, we think someone else has the answer. Just like when I was a kid, I thought my parents had the answer, right? And it's natural, but like even what I ended up figuring it out is that I had the answer myself to get home to myself, to my calling, to my truth.
You had it in you all along. Yeah, that is a really good message from that movie, actually. I never really realized that watching it at a younger age. But it's a great message because, yeah, I mean, we all have it in us. If we take the time to actually look inward and spend that time like working on ourselves, we realize that it lies within us. Interesting.
But how do you do, and especially in today's society, it's like I find, even though I didn't grow up with technology the way you have, it's like how to slow down, how to resist that. Like even today, I shut my phone off for the rest of the drive home after I picked up dinner.
There's been days where I feel like I just need to do that, where it gets so overwhelming and it's just, I feel overstimulated like all the time. And there's been some days where I just wake up and I'm like, I just need to have like a no phone day. I power my phone completely off and I just put it in another room and I just like need to focus. It's hard to do that though. And even sometimes I feel like even after I take those days like for myself, like those mental health days or like breaks from your phone, whatever you want to call it, it's still a lot.
Yeah, we actually need more than just even one day.
Oh yeah. I could go. I feel like it would be really, really helpful to do a cleanse from social media, but it's also really hard, to do that with how much people are on social media. It's about being connected. People want to stay in connection with their friends and their family, and it's like, where do you draw the line between what's more important, you and your health, or keeping in connection with your friends and your family?
Right. And I think it would be interesting to talk on a future show about how we can change the stigma of not responding right away.
Yeah.
That whole left on red thing.
Yeah. Because a lot of people do feel like it's a need, like it's an item on their to-do list.
Right, for sure.
And you don't feel like complete until you check it off, you need to respond to this person, and that's how kids get overstimulated, and I feel like that's how like the stress builds up, and it's actually really sad because a lot of kids become so used to that constant stress and that constant like being under pressure of, oh, I need to respond to this person, and like kids having phones at 10 years old, like it shouldn't be like that. It's really sad.
So we're going to back up to when you were 10 years old and just a little bit before then, and just to finish off that introduction of how I found my calling, because there's a lot of people out there who are asking, people your age, people older, people my age, how do I find my calling?
Yeah.
And once I found it, it's not enough, because then it's like, how do you make it happen?
Right.
And so at the time, I was working at the University of full-time, 2 little kids driving 45 miles one way to work and then back, so 90 miles round trip. But I told myself, if I do one thing a day, so if you think about it as you're heading into your future career, and if there's something that is bigger to you than your college classes, but you just do one thing a day, you're making 365 steps towards that dream every year, right?
It adds up.
It does.
It's the little things in every single day.
So after being at U of M for 12 years, I found a part-time position with the Crim Fitness Foundation in Flint. And while I was working at U of M, I started working for them part-time. And do you remember when I first started coming into your 3rd grade classroom?
Oh yeah, I remember.
How did you feel about that?
I'll just say I didn't feel very good about it. I was definitely very hesitant about my mom being in front of all my classmates, and I would say it was insecurity, honestly, that was keeping me from the idea. Also, I was very uncomfortable with the idea, honestly. I was pretty mad at you.
Do you remember even in 3rd grade? Because I know in 4th grade we had that issue.
3rd grade is with Mrs. Lepler.
Yeah. Were you a little bit more relaxed at first because you were younger?
I thought it was more of an issue in Miss Lepler's class in 3rd grade, yeah. 4th grade was Mrs. Best, right?
Yeah, you hit it well.
Yeah. I don't know.
So it was really serendipity, you know, when you find your truth, everything lines up. And so I went into her classroom. Now in 2nd grade, I had helped do crafts, and truth be told, like this is called real life meditation. So I think it's important to tell the truth. I hated helping you guys with crafts. Some mom comes up with some idea for some craft, and I'm in there volunteering to help just so I want to be around you and your peers. And I'm helping every student with this stupid craft, and it was falling apart. Like, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But if they're falling apart right away, you know, I was so frustrated.
Right. That wasn't more of like your calling, though. That wasn't you teaching. That was just you trying to be involved in the school. Yeah. But you actually following your calling and making a way to, you were making it happen by coming into the classroom to teach meditation in the years following.
Right, right. So when I had met Mrs. Lepler, I had just finished that conference and that training.
In New York?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I walk into her classroom and I took a risk. And that's the other important message here too, is, you know, I could have been embarrassed, but she had a parent volunteer sign-up sheet. And I thought, do I dare say I'd teach mindfulness? Or am I going to be perceived as strange, weird, different, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I volunteered for it, and she was like, I had just signed up. I was waitlisted for a silent meditation, a 10-day silent meditation this summer, and I wasn't able to get into it.
That's amazing.
So she was thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like,
I think that's how your guys' connection really started.
It is.
Was over mindfulness, because you guys had so much in common, and her not judging you for that, and you not having to feel embarrassed and being accepted, and you know, she was just so open to the idea. It was great. It presented you with a good opportunity to like get your foot in the door.
Absolutely. And she amazed me because, you know, she taught mindfulness. I was only in there 1 day a week. She taught mindfulness to your class every day for the rest of her career, so every 3rd grade class. And I kept coming in after you left 3rd grade. Yeah.
No, I do remember her incorporating little tips and tricks of mindfulness into our classroom. It wasn't as in-depth as you would do with like an actual mindfulness session, like where all we did was have like a mindfulness practice, but still she found little ways to incorporate into her classroom, and it really made a difference.
Yeah. And I was teaching in Sophie's classroom too. My other daughter, her sister,
she was in like kindergarten at the time.
Yeah, kindergarten. And
wow.
Mrs. Burham was the teacher, and she said, after we tried for a little bit, she said, these kids are too unruly. She was a really good teacher. She said, let's put it on hold and try again in 2nd semester. And so in 2nd semester, we started again. And I even had Thunder in the classroom, our dog. Yeah, so I used him as a mindfulness tool with the kids.
Oh, that's sweet. You got to find a way to relate to the kindergartners.
You got to find a way to relate to everyone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at all different levels. I remember you saying how hard that was, though, to relate to the kindergartners and teach them mindfulness.
Yeah, because they just want to play. And I mean, children are naturally mindful anyway. They're in the moment. But it's really, mindfulness is also about teaching emotional regulation.
Right.
You know, and so starting that young, it's a lot about modeling. They may not be incorporating the higher level ideas, but literally I would teach them the words and have them even say the words amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, and that helps. Like we said, it's the little things, but they're just so used to go, go, go that all their lives, all of their little lives, they've been so used to just playing and, you know, one thing out of the next. They just have so much energy. So for them to actually learn to calm down, that's the start of something huge.
Yeah, and how to get along better with each other.
Yeah, the younger the better.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories is in 2nd grade. Sophie, I don't know if you remember, she was being bullied by a little boy.
I think I remember.
And I asked the CRIM if I could start the mindfulness lessons earlier, so I was working through them at that time, even though I had my own business. And the teacher was supposed to go through training first, but she was signed up, but it hadn't happened yet. So they let me do the training early in her classroom. In the very first session, I read a book about bullying, and I explained to these 2nd graders how hurt people. And usually if someone's bullying you, especially at that age, it's because they like you. That little boy stopped bullying her that day. He did. He just said he liked her. And so later that summer, I don't know if you remember this, but you and Sophie were in the back seat and Dad and I were in the front seat driving through downtown Fenton. And we saw him and his foster mom on bikes. I think his name was Jeremiah.
I do remember this. Sophie's my sister, by the way. I don't know if you said that.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
But do you remember I saw him and I stopped the car. I was like, Jeremiah, do you remember? No. So he was like, his eyes open wide. And Sophie's window was down and he saw Sophie and he lit up like a Christmas tree, right? His eyes got big and he like was ready to drop the bike. And I could just tell, I was like, do you want to give Sophie a hug? And he just shook his head up and down.
That's sweet.
He ran up to her and he gave her a big hug. You know, we opened the car door and we've never seen him since then. But
Wow. I do think I remember you telling me that story, but I don't remember it from my perspective because I was so young. That's amazing. That's really sweet.
So what I'd like to start with the next time we get together is a conversation about your personal perspective in mindfulness, starting with 4th grade, going through 9th grade. So this has been Therese and Tristan Berlinski with Presence to Pupils. Thanks for joining us on our first episode of REALLM, REALLM, Real Life Meditation. We look forward to bringing you future episodes where you will get insight into how we use meditation, mindfulness, and neuroscience to improve our lives, have better relationships with each other and others, and manifest the future of our dreams.
Thank you guys for watching.